Hello there, people of the internet. My name is Bobbie, and this is Heartfelt with Bobbie on the Dialogues with Jagero show. And today I have a guest that I have started to grow fond of over the last couple of weeks. I actually really admire him. He's hearing this for the first time, but it's really, really true. And I have Simon Javan Okelo, who is an author, a founder, a father, a musician. And if there's anything else I've left out, maybe you can tell us when you know. So Javan, karibu sana to the Dialogues with Jagero show. I'm really excited to talk to you today. Karibu, habari yako?
Mzuri sana. I love being here.
Thank you.
I love this platform, and I love the work that you do, the work that Jagero himself does.
Yeah.
And I believe in storytelling and the way that you guys get information out of people is amazing. So it's really an honor to be here.
Thank you so much for honoring my invite.
Of course.
I would love to hear a lot about what goes on in your brain, but I want us to start from who is Simon? And this question, I'm tying it to, I know where you were born, but the audience might not know. Mm-hmm. So tell us about, where your life started. Paint that picture for us so that we can just get to see maybe your inception and where Simon began and where he starts from.
Thank you. I was born and raised in Kisumu, in a place called Manyata.
Yes.
Manyata CJ, to be exact. And I was born in a huge family, I was, my mom was a second wife in a polygamist marriage. Mm-hmm. And then in 1997, my mom started an orphanage home. And so I grew up with so many people around me all the time, But back to when I was 8 years old, my mom asked me to help her run a business that she had started. Mm-hmm. So she gave me a bicycle and began giving me stocks of bread and milk. So every morning I would wake up at 2 a.m. Most of my childhood I spent really learning how to distribute milk and bread in our neighborhood.
Yeah.
So a lot of people know me in our neighborhood because of those years, And so, growing up, I was always hustling, I started making money when I was really, really young.
Yeah.
And, I grew up also in an environment where really it was survival for the fittest, And so, everything I do now, I think is really influenced by those years, when I was 8 to like 15. Yeah. Those are the years that really shaped who Simon Javan Okelo is.
8 years old is really, really young. I see. This is why you have a lot of experience when it comes to business. So growing up, did you always know who you wanted to be, who you wanted to become when you were older?
Yes and no.
Yeah.
Yes and no.
Tell me about that.
Yes and no, because one of the things that my mom told me almost every day is that, you're a very, very important person.
Yeah.
So I'm asking you to go and do this, but do it like an important person, So even if it was cleaning the toilet, I would clean it like an important person, So she always ensured that I knew my value, And so I approach life like that. I approach every opportunity I have, every job I've ever had. Like I'm an important person, and I need to treat people like an important person treats people, And so I feel that, that's it. I think I've been a leader from a young age.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you said you grew up around a lot of people. Are you from a big family? Is that where it starts from?
I think I have over 30 siblings.
Oh.
From
the same mom?
Not same mom. I have 2 mothers.
Yes.
In my own family, we have like 9 biological. I had like 9 biological, and I still have 9 biological brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
2 of them are no longer alive. The rest are still around. In the first family, we have we have, 20 plus, because, my first mom, like the elder wife in our family, she gave birth to a lot of kids. And those were the years where you could just give birth. People gave birth to like 15 more children.
Kids. Yeah.
I think there was a need for labor. There was a need for, I don't know, but I was born in a big family. I didn't even have a relationship with my dad, not because, of course, he was traveling a lot, working a lot, because there were so many children and I wasn't amongst the first, I think finally I have a relationship with him, but he's 85, So we sometimes just sit there looking at each other, and it gives me feedback here and there. Really, I think for me, because I wasn't amongst the first, I escaped a lot of things that I could have faced if I was amongst the first. Now that I've lost some of my older siblings, I'm actually now the oldest son in the family, and I have to face a lot of challenges that I didn't anticipate I would be facing. In fact, that's one of the reasons. Being a firstborn in such a large family is one of the reasons why living in America was very hard for me, and it's still hard for me until now, because I know my responsibility, and I'm tormented by my responsibility because I know that the land and the house and everything I have in America is really not mine, and I know over there we have Indian tribes that even in speaking, we honor these people, like the Makotio tribes. It's almost like the British never left Kenya, And so imagine the British did not leave Kenya. There was no independence. Whenever they were, like, for example, in Seattle is a very woke city. And so it's expected that if there's a big gathering, a tribal leader has to be there to honor their ancestors, to honor the land, And so when such things are happening, as someone who moved to America in my 20s, I wasn't born there. I feel like a lot of African immigrants move to America out of desperation, and once they get there, they feel like, I have no other alternative. This is it. I have to be here, And they cut links with their ancestral homes, and it's a hole that is left in their heart and their soul and their spirit. And for me, I feel like it's a responsibility to be connected to not just my ancestral home, but Africa, So I have my roots spread across Africa. Like, I could live in Malawi. I could go to Malawi tomorrow, and you'd never see me for a few years.
And you'll be comfortable.
I'll just be fine. I could go to Liberia. I have, like, family and friends there. I could go to Ghana, And I feel like every African, I could go to Jamaica. I could go to Trinidad and Tobago. I have friends and people I've done things with that I could say, bro, I have no place to sleep. I'm coming to Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso. Can I stay with you? They'll say, I'm not there, but here's the key,
A true people's person.
That's the life I've always dreamt of. And as I was saying, when I was 8, I began making connections. If I'm in Manyata in Kisumu right now and I'm completely broke, I'll walk to a shop nearby and they'll remember me and they'll say, you used to bring me bread, what do you want, I'll say, I'm hungry. And they'll say, here's some milk, here's 100 shillings, So relationships are actually investments,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I love that. I love the way you've answered my question. So let's talk about moving to America. How did this come about? Where did it come from? Did you always want to move and then you got an opportunity, or like what pushed you to want to leave Africa?
Nothing. I was working for an NGO as their field director for Africa. I worked in South Sudan, Uganda, Tanzania, Malawi, Liberia, Ghana. I was building schools, hospitals, orphanage homes, starting horticultural projects, In fact, I took teachers from Kenya to South Sudan to work there, professors, we poached like a professor from KCA to go and help build the curriculum of South Sudan.
Yeah.
In Liberia, I went with agricultural officers from Kenya to go and help establish horticultural programs and big farming initiatives. I used to actually report directly to the Liberian president.
Oh, wow.
So every month I would go to her house. Her eldest sister was the patron of the project we were doing, So we would have dinner, wine, and then I would report, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf's son is a doctor in Alaska, and the biggest donor for that project was also a doctor in Alaska. And so I would say that work, when I was doing all these projects around Africa, part of my job was to go to the US to fundraise so that we could get more donors for these projects, So, I remember in 2009, I went to New York, Wall Street. I was going and, where the, New York Stock Exchange is taking place and pitching to people there, business owners, some of the millionaires, while they're working,
Yeah.
And, some of them ended up coming to Kisumu on private jets to see the projects that we were doing. I went to Salt Lake City, I went to Alaska, and then I went to Seattle. In 2009, my girlfriend at the time lived in Seattle, but some of our donors also lived in Seattle. And I'd met my girlfriend while I was working in Liberia. We were working together. So while I was there in 2009, I proposed to her.
Oh.
I went on Google and I Googled how to propose. and so while we were hanging out in her parents' basement, I just pulled a ring out of the popcorn that we were watching the movie, and enjoying. And I say, hey, will you marry me? And that was the beginning of me being in a serious relationship.
Yeah.
And so 2009, then I moved to the US in 2010, In fact, I told my girlfriend at the time when we were still dating that I had no interest in going to America. I had no interest in getting married. I had no interest in having children. And I did all of that,
Yeah.
because love actually
supersedes
what you think. Yeah.
It's like the never say never.
Yeah.
So let me ask, why weren't you interested in marriage and kids and moving to America and all these things?
Because I grew up in a polygamist family.
Yeah.
And from my young age, I felt abandoned. And I felt responsible from a very young age. So I was a bit mad at my dad. I was mad at everyone. I was mad at myself for being in that situation. And so anything that was going to tie me down, I didn't want, Yeah. I wanted to do things so that I could liberate myself from the situation that I was in. Yeah. So I loved traveling, That's why working around Africa was something that was important to me. I loved music, Around that time when I was 2009, maybe 2004 to 2009, 10, I was a DJ,
Yeah.
And so music was also a place of comfort for me, and it still is. So I just felt that my priority was actually my mom, and I wanted to do everything for her to feel comfortable because I felt like she had suffered enough. And that's why I didn't want to get married. I just wanted to be able to do things and move fast and be able to thrive and do well, but really take care of my mom,
Yeah.
But then in the process of denying what really what nature requires of all of us.
Yeah.
I ended up doing what everybody does, you know. So I feel like for the last maybe 15 years, I was living the dream of many people, but
And
maybe
your
not
own?
my dream.
How come? You felt like an imposter? Like all these things that were happening weren't yours, ama nini?
That, but also, I was not in Africa. And I feel like I have a deep responsibility for, as an African, there's more responsibility in this world than we all think.
Yeah.
When you live in America, you realize that, black women have to work like 50 times more than anybody there. Black men are at risk more than anybody there. You have no peace, You could be going for a run and something bad happens, So I always, and I still feel like I don't belong. I don't belong to a place like America. When I'm here, even if I have nothing, I can walk to places, I can get to places. And so I just feel that for me, I'm still in a journey of self-discovery. But I do know that part of my journey is here, And also, part of my journey is in America, it's in the UK, it's in Australia.
It's all
I have
over
a
the
big
world.
dream. I have big dreams that cannot let me be in one place. Yeah.
I like that. So I know from, you getting into family and having, kids and a wife now, this is where African Father in America probably began from. So tell us a bit about, your experience, you being now a husband and a father in America, in a different land where, all these things, you're going through all these things and you're still trying to realize who you are and where you really want to be.
Yeah.
So what was that like for those 15 years or so?
They were beautiful, actually.
Yeah.
They were beautiful. I have actually no regrets in my life, But I wasn't raised in an environment where my dad was always there, I wasn't raised in an environment of scarcity. Even though you have all the material things you need, mentally, it's not enough, And you're always looking for more, So you have no peace to enjoy what you've already made, And also, for me, those last 15 years, relationships, as I was saying, have been the biggest investment that I've made, be it relationships with my own kids, relationships with, my kids' mom, my in-laws, my community, relationship even with peers in the industry that I work in. I feel that for me, that has been the most important thing over those last 15 years. And then I've also learned a lot that I can now apply here. I've learned about the things that I can do, whether it's business or survival or just being sane. I learned about meditation in America. I didn't even know about meditation here.
Yeah.
And I was probably meditating and I didn't even know that I was meditating. I learned a lot about just alternative ways of living, There are communes in America that live off of the grid, and they're always fighting with the system. I have a good friend of mine who is actually coming to Kenya soon, who grew up in one of those communes where it's really like our culture. In the Luo culture, if you are raised in a polygamist marriage and you live in the village, where you have multiple wives living together. Sometimes you spend the night in a house that is not yours. But also even here in Nairobi, if you live in a neighborhood where families are supporting each other, or let's say you live in a plot, where your family and my family can sometimes have breakfast together or sleepovers. I feel that such things, many people just think, when they think of America, they just think of the movies. They just think of what they see in the movies. Yeah. But it's so different. And for me, I just feel that for me, my biggest thing that grounded me, even during those 15 years, has always been, my passion for Africa, my passion for anything, any opportunity I have. How can I share this with Mama Africa? Yeah. When can I go to Africa next? What can I do when I go there next? Yeah. And how can I bring this investment back home, So for me, it's always about that. And that's probably why I'm here now, I would have probably been in a 9-to-5 job right now and just doing well, having investments, having multiple houses, having multiple businesses. But I just chose a path that is not popular, with many Kenyans who have gone to live abroad, or even with many Kenyans here, Yeah. And for me, I just think that it's important to follow your heart.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. Tell me about, the Afia podcast.
Afia podcast, okay. So Afia podcast started during the pandemic. At that time, I was actually working as the social manager for Antioch University, social media manager for Antioch University. It's one of the oldest universities in America, with over 5 campuses across the country. And I started their podcast. I was the host for the post, I'm the brainchild behind Antioch University's podcast. If you listen to the 4 to 7 first episodes, I'm the one hosting, So in the process of doing that, I had all the equipment for podcasting. I had invested in all the gears so that I could have high quality Zoom meetings. Yeah. And then I was hosting a program on Clubhouse. Clubhouse was an audio app. It's almost like Twitter Spaces. In fact, Twitter Spaces came off of Clubhouse. Elon Musk used to join shows on Clubhouse that I was a part of. And so I gained a lot of following during the pandemic. Every morning I would wake up, and because I felt like, I have to ground myself in my culture, I would pick one African proverb and then bring it so that we can discuss it with people. So 1 hour before I began the show, I would post it on my Instagram, people would engage with it, and then we would meet on Clubhouse. And now that I had good equipment, I was like, everybody's enjoying my voice, everybody's enjoying their interpretation of the proverb. So African Father in America started just as a way for me to heal, to meditate, to ground myself in my own culture, and to also laugh. Some of the African proverbs we were discussing were so hilarious, and so discussing it with people of African descent, you'd have people joining from, even from, Central America, South America, and so after doing this for 2 months, 3 months, I felt like I'll always be a father, and so I rebranded this conversation that I was holding on Clubhouse to Afia, African Father in America, because I used to talk about my kids a lot, even before I had this brand. And then I used to discuss these proverbs with my kids. So African Father in America was started just out of these conversations I was having. I have 700 episodes. So I have
That's a lot.
Yeah.
That's daily for 2 years.
Daily for 3 years, not 2 years.
That's a lot.
Yeah, every day I had to design. I hired people here in Kenya. I had a social media manager and a graphic designer.
Ukikuwa tu majuu.
Nikikuwa Maju.
Yeah.
And we had a database of African proverbs where we would go online, research, and people started bringing us these proverbs, from different parts of the world. I interviewed a number of Ugandan journalists who had come together and authored a book. And each of them, for some reason, were giving me hilarious proverbs from their tribes.
Yeah.
And so for me, I think Afia Podcast was one of the biggest things that ever happened to me in my life. I had the privilege of interviewing, Elder Jane Naidu. He was the first Secretary General for COSATU. He was the first Minister of Communication in South Africa, He was in the picture where Winnie Mandela and Nelson Mandela are walking out of prison. He's also in that picture,
Yeah.
He's one of the people that were negotiating for Mandela's release from prison. So for someone like that to follow these proverbs and end up saying, I love what you're doing, how can I be a part of it, felt like, not only are... Yeah. And then he started introducing me to people, and he's still introducing me to people, And for me, to joke with my daughters, when I'm actually teaching them something and I'm about to say, like, to educate them, they're like, oh, I know you're going to say an African proverb, So I'm like, oh, you guys know me too well,
Yeah.
So for me, I just feel that actually cemented my belief in who I am as an African. And I feel that being an African is a privilege, huge privilege, especially spiritually. We have a very deep level of spiritual being, but we are always in a rat race. We don't really realize how great we are. And so we put aside a lot of our dreams, and we chase the bag. And, Bob Marley always said that, money is like numbers. You can never count and be satisfied with the numbers you get. You can always count and count and count. Numbers never end,
Yeah.
Yeah. And so for me, Afia Podcast was part of my medication, and it helped me get through the pandemic, But the relationships it built for me have been incredible. I did Madaraka Festival virtually in 2000, and in 2020 we did Madaraka Festival virtually, and a lot of these people that I met through Afia Podcast attended.
How did it work? How do you hold a festival virtually?
Well, we streamed it. And for example, in Nairobi, we worked with Gig Dynamics, and at their studio, we sent artists to go and record their performances there. So it was a pre-recorded Madaraka Festival. And then we facilitated we had like 8-hour programming. So artists from Spain, Togo, Paris, from all over the world sent like 30 minutes performances, 15-minute performances. Ghana, people like Rocky Dauni. Here in Nairobi, we had like Butros, Jumatutu. In Kisumu, we had Gabiro, Apesi. We had a really incredible production. So we were live on Clubhouse, live on YouTube, and we also had like a Zoom room where people were actually having conversations. We had an African-American pastor and another African-American bishop were hosting, and they were hilarious. We wanted to involve everybody because it was the pandemic. For me, Madaraka Festival has always been an inclusive experience, We had a Chinese-American pastor that was also co-hosting. The thing is, for me, I think one of my best gifts is collaboration, and finding ways to accommodate everybody's ideas and perspectives. And so that's how we were able to pull off an 8-hour production with hundreds of thousands of views across multiple platforms. And, as a result, I was also able to do Africa Day virtually like that. Chimbori Kwao?
Yes.
I interviewed her. She was one of the guests. Boniface Mwangi. I hosted so many people in the course of not just doing a fair podcast, but using that platform to do Madaraka Festival virtually, to do Africa Day virtually. I've curated Africa Day celebration for the Gates Foundation for about 7 years. And so during the pandemic, they were closed, but I was still able to do Africa Day, Yeah, so that's how we did Madaraka 2020.
That's my mind, I keep thinking, like, the more I'm around you, the more I hear the things you say. It's like, that's amazing. But you keep blowing my mind with every new thing that you say. And I think this is why I admire you a lot, because you have a lot of proactivity and you consistently push yourself. But the more I listen to you speak now, I'm seeing it's deeper than just things you want. It's who you are. It's just you being who you are. It's not you really chasing anything. It's just you becoming. And it's really amazing to see. And I'm super proud of you.
Thank you.
I hope that you're enjoying this program. Over the last 15 years, I have been working online for clients in America, in Europe, and all over the world. And that is why it pains me a lot when I see a lot of African brothers and sisters saying that they do not have a job. Now, this is the problem. A lot of people are trying to look for a job in 2024 in their own town, in their own, in their local area. Now, the truth is, there are no jobs in Africa, at least not so many jobs. The good news is that we have internet these days. We have a tablet, we have a computer, we have a phone, and that means that we can do a lot of jobs, and those jobs are online. That is why over the last 4 years I've been writing a book that is called Digital Goldmine. It is a book that explains to you how you can earn money online. The 18 hustles that I've chosen are basically for Africans, because what happens when you are doing online jobs is that payment is usually a problem. So these 18 side hustles that I have put together in this book, you can be paid very well and very conveniently. Okay, so the book is only 1,000 Kenya shillings. That is about $10. You can buy it in Kenya using paybill number. You can buy it online from anywhere in the world using a credit or a debit card. All the information about this book is in the description below. And if you have a brother, you have a wife, you have a husband, you have a friend who is sitting at home and watching Netflix, please do buy this book for them. If you are the one sitting at home and watching Netflix and have nothing to do, please buy this book and your life is gonna change forever. Because I have been doing this online and I've been traveling and I've been enjoying myself and having a lot of fun. So thank you very much, and now back to programming.
Are you still married?
Me?
Yeah.
I'm in a complicated time
Okay.
in my marriage.
Okay.
So we are basically in the process of being separated.
Okay.
We're in the state where I live in America. We are doing what we call legal separation.
So what does that mean or entail?
It just means that we are not divorced, but we are not married either.
Okay. So you're moving on, or it's just complicated.
I would say that we are no longer in love, but we are parents, and we have our biggest interest is the well-being of our kids.
Yeah.
And so I would say that is what brings me and my wife together, and my children's mom together.
Yeah.
But we are legally we are not married.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and how does that affect you? You're doing all these big things. You're doing all this move. How does this affect you being a father and just co-parenting and everything? This whole process, because you're everywhere. You're all over the world. You're always consistently traveling. And now I see you're in Kenya a lot more. So tell me about, how are you juggling, and how is all this working for you, and how is it affecting you?
So One, I have to say that my children's mom is a wonderful person, and I honestly, I would not be juggling all these things if she didn't believe in my dream and who I am. And while we met while I was already doing everything I do, and then for 15 years, I actually focused on her. I gave her everything.
Lover boy.
Everything. I gave her 3 beautiful girls. Yeah. I gave her all the time I could in terms of even contributing to everything we built together. But during that entire time, I'm sure that she was always thinking that this guy, I know where I found him and what he was doing. And I think one of her biggest worries was accepting who I am. I think for me, I just wanted to be the best dad, and she can tell you that she still believes I'm the best dad. But I wasn't the best husband. I wasn't a good partner because I feel that I'm married to my dreams. I'm married to Madaraka. And so she knows that, and I know that. I didn't know how passionate I was until it got to a place where she said, you choose, it's either me or Madaraka, And I told her I can't choose. I've always had you and Madaraka and everything.
Yeah.
And so it's an ongoing conversation, but I do know that I'm able to juggle this because my kids and her and my family at large, my in-laws, my family here, they've accepted me the way I am, And so they're they believe in me enough to let me loose and do what I need to do. And for me, that's a huge privilege,
yes.
Because I don't have to fight to pursue my dream, but I've done enough for my family and my inner circle that they say, we believe in you.
Yeah.
So you go and do it. If you fail, you still belong.
You come back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've done what I do long enough, and all the other things around my life. I've also been so consistent that even though it's a decision and a direction that does not favor my kids or the mom or even my entire family, sometimes, for example, my eldest sister lives in the UK. She was in Kenya recently because we lost one of my sisters. And, she had to push her flight like 3 times to spend time with me. And it's very hard to piss my eldest sister off. And so I knew it was coming, but I was pursuing my dream. So I had to travel quick between Kisumu and many other places, Mombasa, Nairobi, Kampala. And so she was mad. But then other family members were telling her, look, he went there and this is what he did. This will help you this way. You're not seeing this,
Yes.
So I have advocates. Sometimes I don't even know I have advocates, Like last night I was at an event at the Deputy Ambassador's residence. And the moment I went past security, there was someone who yelled my name and said, Simon, come here. I want you to meet this person.
Yeah.
People were already advocating for me before I even got there,
Before you even walk into the room.
So I feel that your work sometimes does the work for you, And I feel that being consistent, even with the African father in America, my father-in-law is a renowned professor, white guy. He doesn't care about Africa, but he cared about my proverbs. If I failed to post a proverb on Instagram, he was amongst the first people to ask me, because by 6, my proverbs would be out there.
Yeah.
So by 9, he would say, Simon, are you okay?
What's up?
Yeah. And now he has his favorite proverbs, I've been called in big gatherings, For example, I was once invited as a special guest at a gathering where survivors of the Holocaust and the Rwandan genocide were having a conversation. And my job there was to share African proverbs, And
Yeah.
you know what you do will put you in places that even money and education cannot put you in.
Yes.
You know, so for me, I just believe in myself, and I believe in my purpose, and that's my focus.
I like that. So, yani ata sijui. Everything you're saying is just touching me in a very different way today. So let's talk about Madaraka Festival now. So, what is Madaraka Festival? What is it about? When did it start? What are you doing? What is it?
Well, Madaraka Festival, similar to African Father in America podcasts, which I no longer produce. I produce Madaraka Festival podcast. Madaraka is the biggest East African music festival in the world, but it happens in America. It started 10 years ago. It started in June 2014 at the Museum of Pop Culture. This museum was built, by Paul Allen. He's the co-founder of Microsoft. And he's also the first person that actually put money into Madaraka Festival. You know, his financial advisor, this is a billionaire. His financial advisor was a big fan of what I was doing. And so one day after advising him on all the money he has, she told him, look, you have to watch this video.
Yeah.
So they watched like a 3-minute video of the work I was doing in Kisumu, where I was building this education, music, and art program, where you are, you know?
Yeah.
And so then he said, so what does he want? How can I help him? And then she said, well, he needs a venue to do a music festival to continue raising money for this program that he does. And then he said, okay, I'll give him a music venue, and then I'll give him $15,000, you know?
Yeah.
And that, along with the support of the Seattle community, you know, I have to give a big shout out to Owora Runga. Is probably the only Kenyan with a Grammy award, like a legit Grammy award. He used to be the trumpet player for Macklemore and Ryan Lewis, you know, and he was the first music director for Madaraka Festival. He was
How did you meet him? Just through these things you're doing?
He knew about me even before I went to the States.
Yeah.
The things I was doing, I'll take you back. Madaraka Festival actually started in Kisumu. Let me take you back even further. Yeah, so in 2007, we had the elections. At that time, I was actually the field director for Africa for Solace International. So I was DJing on the side, but traveling a lot around Africa. And so right the day we voted in 2007, it was in December, I left Kisumu. We voted early in the morning. That same day, I went to the airport, then came to Nairobi, spent one night. The next day, I flew to Ghana. We were building a hospital in Ghana, in Volta region, in a town called Ho. It's really like a few minutes from the border with Togo. So while in Ghana, like 2 days after we had voted, you know, the counting started changing. You know, we started seeing things, you know. And so we were at the Liberian embassy in Ghana processing our visas to go to Liberia. And so things started, you know, chaos started, and Kisumu was in the news, you know. And the Liberian ambassador was telling us, this is how things started in Liberia, you know. You guys need to be careful, you know. And so by the time we went back to the place where we were working in, we were in Ghana for like a week. And during that week, things got messed up in Kenya. At that time, my mom was running an orphanage home in Kisumu. Also the same place where we were when you visited. And so we had kids, you know, over 60 kids were living there. That was their home. And during school days, there were like 200 kids that would go in. That building was a primary school. Oh. The building opposite were hostels.
Those were classrooms and stuff? Okay.
Opposite that building were hostels where the kids lived. And then the kitchen that I was pointing, that was the kitchen where the kids used to get food made.
Okay.
and next to it was a dining room. It's our like green room now for production. And so that was also our home before it turned into an orphanage home, you know. And so we had like 5,000 chickens there. We had a chicken business that we were running. Because these kids could not leave that compound.
Your mom is very industrious, just like you.
Yes, she was.
Yeah.
They, you know, during that week, these kids ate all these chickens, and they like the store was empty because there was no market or shop working. So my mom became desperate. There was no food for these kids. So while I was in Liberia, now I was actually about to leave Ghana for Liberia. I began figuring out, how do I go back home quickly to evacuate my mom and these kids from Kisumu, because there were bullets flying. Like I was sometime in Ghana and I'm being sent videos of this is what's happening right now, you know? And so kids were now familiar with the sounds of bullets and things like that. We had bullet holes in that building, you know? And so being in Ghana and about to go to a country that had just is just recovering from war, I was like, wow, I need to go back home, you know. And I had worked in South Sudan too, so I knew how to move around even in war-torn places. But I had to go and finish work in Liberia for a few weeks. But things were worsening in Kenya. The Eldoret church massacre was happening. And so eventually, my boss actually now took Kenya as a humanitarian project. And he was like, okay, now you need to go. That is now your assignment. You have to leave Liberia, and, you know. So I feel that when I went to Kisumu, you know, even getting to Kisumu from Nairobi took me 3 days during the post-election.
You went by car? How did
I
you
flew.
go?
I flew to Nairobi. Even getting flights to Kenya at that time was a challenge.
Yeah.
But I flew to Nairobi, then I flew to Eldoret, you know, then stay a night there. Then I got a flight to Kisumu, you know, with journalists and, you know, humanitarian people. And then when I got to Kisumu, it took me like a whole day from the old Kisumu airport to where our place is, because of roadblocks. There were like roadblocks every half a kilometer, and you have to do something. You know what I mean?
Kitu kidogo.
But what I learned is every roadblock, there was someone who had attended my reggae shows. You know, I was a reggae DJ. So I was like, I know you, and he's like, Javu, ni wewe, lakini hapa hivi mi yenyewe sina say. Uko na nini hapa? Anasema niko na cabbage, leta hiyo cabbage. Yeah. So I shopped. I knew that people were hungry, people needed food. So I had like unga, I had stuff, you know. So I could just give away as I went by. But even until the last roadblock, I knew someone. So I was like, this is great. These guys listen to reggae. Let's organize like a reggae concert, you know. And so I immediately began evacuating my mom and the kids, but also planning a peace concert, you know. It was called Unite the People Concert. So this was really the beginning of Madaraka Festival, April 2008. I think it was like a week or two after Kofi Annan, after we had that Kibaki and Raila handshake. That's when we were allowed to hold a public music concert. Yeah. The same people I had met during this trip from the airport to my place were there.
They attended.
They had no machete, they had no weapon. Yeah. We just had a good time. We started at 5. The next day at 8, nobody wanted to go home. We had stopped the music, but people were just outside. You know, traders were bringing food there. People were just hanging out. Are you going to continue doing this? When are you going to do it next? You know? So I was like, okay, we do it again next year, you know? But that money from that event is what we used to register One Vibe Entertainment Foundation at the NGO Coordination Board. So the DJs and the MCs that night were the first board members of One Vibe Africa, you know? And so every year we began just building this concert series. And then I moved to the US officially in 2010, and I kept doing it there. I did Unite the People concert there in 2012. And then I realized that African Americans love African names and African branding.
And music.
So we were at Owura Runga's house, his mother's house. And they already knew about Unite the People concert and what I was doing in Kisumu. So they asked me, how can we help? And these are people who are deeply rooted in the African American culture. And then I told them, I just need a venue, and I think we should do this thing around June 1st, June 1st fell on a Saturday. Madaraka Day. That's how we rebranded.
Madaraka Festival.
Yeah, Madaraka Festival.
So that's where the name came from as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we rebranded Unite the People concert to Madaraka Festival because the date when it was happening was Madaraka Day.
Yeah.
And for some reason, it drew all the Kenyans, all the Nigerians, all the African Americans. And this was the first African event held in a high-end venue in Seattle. The Museum of Pop Culture has the biggest indoor LED screen in the world. So imagine someone from Manyatta holding an event at this venue. And do you know the headliner for the first Madaraka?
Who was it?
Macklemore. You know Macklemore?
Are you kidding me?
The year he won the Grammys, the year he was the headliner for Madaraka. So there was a line around the building, and people came curious, what is this Madaraka? Why is Macklemore the headliner? And it was like a euphoric feeling, And we were able to not only sell out the venue. If I show you pictures of that day and having the sold out sign outside, it was really moving.
Yeah.
But we also raised a lot of money, over $70,000, We were able to get everybody paid, and we started One Vibe Studio. The recording studio you saw in Kisumu was as a result of that first Madaraka Festival. So every year when we do Madaraka Festival, we do something. The second year, we started One Vibe Films, our film production company. And this year, we are starting Omena Train, our Omena, our locally sourced Omena brand, Yeah. So really Madaraka Festival is also, it's not just mine. It has overgrown me and my capacity. So now we are involving so many partners. Madaraka Festival is the only African festival in the world that officially partners with Live Nation. Live Nation is the biggest concert producer in the world. So for them to follow our story for 9 years, and last year they were like, okay, we have to work with you, And if you look at Sauti Sol's shows, the same idea of not doing a shoddy job with the events I produce is the same idea that people didn't realize that we started this 10 years ago. So when people are seeing the venues where Sauti Sol performed last year, they were like, who is this? How has
Who
it,
is doing
like
this?
even Kenyans in America, like big Kenyan event organizers.
Yeah.
Some of them are not comfortable with me and Madaraka. Some of them believe that I have so much money, but they don't know that it's relationships.
Yes.
It's just relationships.
And it's years and years and years of building.
And so much pain and suffering that that I can't even comprehend.
Yeah. I think that's the thing, because when people see you shining, they forget there's days you cried. You just don't show us the bad parts because we see the success stories, but there's a lot that goes behind the scenes as well. Yeah.
So this is really just the beginning.
Yes.
Madaraka Festival is like a plant, So when the seed was planted after the post-election violence, it took years for it to sprout. Now it's out of the ground. The roots are way down there, It doesn't even have all the branches.
Yeah.
It doesn't even have all the leaves. It's about to have the
blossoming.
fruits, So we're about to have Madaraka Festival globally, Yeah. everywhere in the world we are going to have Madaraka Festival.
And I will come to everywhere you will be. I must.
You have to. I was at Gecko Cafe in July.
Yeah.
I recently dropped an album, and there was a lady that lived in Seattle, and she attended Madaraka Festival. She's a Kenyan who lived there, went to school, and then we did Madaraka Festival in Los Angeles, and then she came there. And then she saw that Madaraka Festival is doing something in Nairobi at Gecko Cafe. I have to go.
Yeah.
So she came with her crew, her sister who lives in South Africa, and a couple of friends. And everybody walked out of the venue after the performance, but they stayed. And then when I was alone with my crew, they came over and said, we really have to go, but we want to just talk to you by yourself, you know. And so they were like, we are really proud of what you're doing. We just wanted you to know that. And we are here because of you. And so I was like, wow, this is the reward, this is the payment, just those words and encouragement from a total stranger, that what you do is important to me, you know. And that takes me back to what my mom used to tell me, that you're an important guy, you know.
Person, yeah.
Yeah. So I feel like important people do important things.
They do.
Yeah.
Your story is just, it's very, I don't know, it's given me a rush of a lot of hope. And just, there's so many lessons I'm taking from this today. And now I want to, as we're winding up, just tell me a little bit about how, what would you say to someone who's out there trying to figure things out? Maybe they don't have the confidence that you have. Maybe they don't have the money they think you have. Maybe they don't know how to, create this social capital. What would you say to them? How do you think they could get started? Something practical, something anyone can do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the first thing I would say, go to a mirror near you and talk to yourself.
Yeah.
And tell yourself you are amazing.
Yeah.
And just go and face the world and come back to that mirror. And even if you made one step towards your goal, remind yourself how great you are.
Yeah.
That's the only fuel you need to continue going. Because what's really interesting about this life is that if you can dream, then you're already privileged. Yeah. Because there are people whose dreams are limited to the walls of committee prison. They can still dream, but they know that, I'm here for 5 years, Like Vybz Kartel, for almost 10 years, his dreams were just limited to the prison walls in Jamaica. But he kept working on his music, He kept believing. He kept going to that mirror and saying, I am Vybz Kartel. And now this 31st December, he's selling out the National Stadium.
Yeah.
Do you know how much people are paying him for one gig?
How much?
$1 million.
Okay.
Just because in that prison he kept going to the mirror and saying, I'm Vybz Kartel, I'm the greatest.
Yeah.
So I feel that we can all do that. There is nothing that is so difficult. I always say that work has never killed anyone, and so even if you have nothing, you still have you. That breath, that life,
Yeah. And you're an important person.
Yes.
The most important lesson.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like we've touched on everything. Is there anything maybe you want to talk about? And also tell us, where people can find you on social media, if they want to connect, if they'd love to work with you.
Yeah. I have something to say.
Okay.
Then I'll tell people how to connect with me. Number one, I want you and the team producing this show, Jagero included, I want you all to know that I'm very proud of you,
Oh.
Yeah. What you are doing also with Love and Orgasms is really important, I've ever heard about this term, nyamrerwa. Go and ask your dad. But what you're doing, you are the nyamrerwa of our time.
Yeah.
Where women and people can actually come and consult you. Some will come in secret, because they don't want to be seen.
Yes.
But just know that what you're doing is important and you have to keep at it, And, I also pray that this show continues and grows and employs, hundreds of people.
Yeah.
That's really my prayer for you guys. Because I know if you guys grow, I'll grow.
We all grow.
Yeah. Yeah, and then for those who are watching, thank you for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe and follow me at Okello Javan across all social media platforms, and also follow Madaraka Festival at Madaraka Festival across all social media platforms. And come to Kisumu on December 14th. We've lined up a really beautiful Omena celebration just for you.
Before we wind up, why Omena? What is this about Omena?
Well, I love Omena.
Yeah.
Omena, for those who don't know, it's Omena is it's like sardine. It's like fingerlings, and it's very delicious. But many people in the Kenyan society view Omena as food for the poor. It's true, but do you know why the poor are actually healthier? Because they eat Omena.
Yeah.
But that's a side note. Why Madaraka Festival's theme is Omena? There are 3 reasons. Number 1 is for the economic purposes. Omena is like gold, The Congolese people have their diamonds and their coltan. We have our Omena, People are literally mining Omena. When you're fishing for commercial purposes, you're mining, really. It's a natural resource. And so people are exporting Omena and they're living a good life in America, while the people that get the Omena out of the lake, that some drown, their families are not even paid for those lives that are lost. For us, we want to really ensure that we build an Omena brand that puts money back into the pockets of the ordinary fishermen along the lake, the ordinary families that need to benefit from Omena. So that's number 1. We are building an Omena brand. It's called Omena Train. So by December 14th, we will be able to start supplying you and Jagero with your Omena, Number 2, for environmental purposes, Omena is very critical to the ecosystem within Lake Victoria. If you took Omena out of the lake will become swampy. Mbuta, Nile perch, and tilapia can't survive because Omena actually, nurtures the environment for other things in the lake. And then finally, because of the nutritional values of Omena, we are partnering with health clinics. For example, Med25 in Beta. And part of the money from Madaraka Festival is going to support this health clinic that is really unique. Med25 is the 25th declaration of the UN human rights, that everybody deserves access to healthcare. And this clinic, probably the only clinic in the world where if you have no money and you have a chicken, they'll take care of you. If you have a goat, they'll take care of you. If you have a gunia of Omena, they'll take care of you, So we want to ensure that, people who can't afford it, who live by the lake, can actually get access to healthcare. Yeah.
Everything you do is always more about helping other people, even before you think about yourself. And I really appreciate your selflessness, your willingness to grow, be a better person, and to carry everyone else along this journey with you. It's so beautiful to see, and I'm so honored and I'm so glad to have a front row seat to watch your life unfold.
Thank you.
It's
I appreciate
beautiful.
it. I appreciate it. I really do. Yeah.
We could go on and on and on, and I am really enjoying this conversation.
Yeah.
And I would love to, have you back, especially after the festival, to talk about, the experience and how everything was. Maybe you could put us on game and teach us how to do everything that you're doing. Just tell us more about, the experience and how the festival went. But we will see each other at the event.
Madaraka Festival.
Yes.
Why don't you guys
December
come and actually
14th.
broadcast from there? Like you could interview the artists. You could
Yes.
set up, you know, in one of the spaces we have. We have like 30 vending spaces, but I think we could set you guys up in the green rooms where the artists are. So let's follow up on that.
Yes.
Let's
See
pull
you
up on that. Asante sana. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for coming.
Of
Such
course.
an honor.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much for watching. This has been a beautiful hour, and I've learned so much. I hope you have too. And Simon, thank you so much again for coming on the show. And yeah, if you have any questions for us, for Simon, anything you want to say, keep it in the comments and we will be sure to respond to you guys. This has been Heartfelt with Bobbie on DWJ. And until next time, toodles.